either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
You sorry? You waste our film.
It's so bad. Good batch of films, both in theaters and for streaming, to check out this week. Glad you're here. This is the Screening Room Podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we will start out with a family at a remote farmhouse being attacked by an unseen animal. But as the night stretches on, the father begins to transform into something unrecognizable. It is Wolfman.
Daddy? Daddy? What's wrong with Daddy?
He got sick.
What is happening to me?
Can you understand me? Yeah. You're hearing me. You're scaring me.
Back off! Please, Daddy's mean. Hurry, Mommy, he's coming.
We have been looking forward to this, mainly because it's Leigh Whannell
Right.
as the director and the co-writer, because he did such a great job with Invisible Man a few years ago.
Right.
Really enjoyed that.
Right. And he also did Upgrade a few years before that, which was fun. And of course, if you don't know this, he wrote Saw. He's written a bunch of the Insidious films. He wrote Cooties, which we like very much. So he's if you're a horror fan, you know that he brings something.
Yeah, because as I've said several times, I am no fan of the jump scare.
No.
But like anything else, it can be done effectively, and especially in Invisible Man.
The best.
He can do them effectively. So I was looking forward to this, and unfortunately, I think both of us were let down by this one.
Right. And, we're also both big fans of werewolf movies,
Yes.
We'll always look forward to those. And so we were excited about this. It is not a sequel to the 1941 film or a reboot or a reimagining. It's a completely different storyline, although it is a Universal film. And Christopher Abbott plays a man who goes back to his childhood home, isolated in the mountains and forests of Oregon. He has his wife, played by Julia Garner, and their daughter in tow. Then they come across pretty immediately this creature. And the thing is, Act 2 does a good job of ratcheting tension. There's some really good set pieces. There's some good action sequences. The inside the house looks good. The stuff that they do outside in the woods and at this sort of barn and at this greenhouse kind of a thing, all very cool looking and good at raising tension. There are two big problems, and the biggest one for anybody watching is the werewolf itself, which is always, if you go to see a werewolf movie, I mean, that's usually where they fall apart. What does the wolf look like?
And the transformation. That's what everybody, if you're coming into a Wolfman movie, you're right. People are interested in that. And while I give anybody, any filmmaker that wants to do something different, I give credit for that. You want to go in a different direction. And they do here with the transformation sequences. It is not what people are expecting.
No.
I think a lot of people will be disappointed. I was disappointed.
Yes.
I mean, you can go too far the other way. You can go too far with the CGI. We've seen that many times. Here, it pulls back, and it goes very, very slowly. Don't expect a big, 30-second or a minute scene of a constant transformation from man to wolf. We don't get that here.
No, it's kind of in
incremental
bits and spurts. Throughout
exactly.
the film.
And it just didn't work as
and
well
it never
for me.
really becomes a wolf.
Not really.
No.
And it feeds into the narrative a little bit, because when they first see the creature, they say it looks more like a man. But they're doing something new to the approach of the Wolfman, which I respect. I just don't think it works, and it's one of the many things in this movie that just makes it feel like it's nothing really that grabs you.
No,
you're right. I mean, Whannell establishes a good sense of isolation.
Yep.
I mean, they definitely seem like they're deep in the woods, that's for sure.
Yep.
And that's always a little creepy when you see that no one's around, and then you come across a local and they're a little bit creepy, and maybe you're right away you're feeling not wanted. Oh, am I in danger? So there's a good sense there. And there are a couple good set pieces, like you mentioned. There's one on top of sort of I don't know what you call, like a tarp or on top of a truck.
Yeah.
That's very cool,
Yeah.
shot well. But all in all, it just doesn't deliver the frights enough, and certainly it doesn't deliver the expectation that I think people will bring to not only this, but any werewolf movie, really.
Yeah. And I think that there's as almost every horror movie is, it's built on a metaphor. And I think that it becomes really overwrought by Act 3. And, I just don't think there's enough going on. There are not enough complications to the story. There's just not enough going on to keep your attention the whole time.
Yeah, and everything is pretty well telegraphed. I mean, those metaphor beats that you just mentioned, not hard to figure out. I don't think it's terrible.
No.
But when you come into it with the expectations that maybe Invisible Man set up,
yes,
which are pretty high, because that took a movie that could easily have fallen apart. Now we will say one of the things that elevated Invisible Man was the performance of Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah, that's
right away.
Yeah,
right away.
It was an interesting movie. It was interestingly put together, but it became a really compelling, excellent film because Elizabeth Moss was insanely good in it.
Insanely good, and some great jump scares. One especially.
Yeah.
And this one, not that the performances are bad, they're not, but it's just not as engrossing. You're not wrapped up in it from the beginning, and then when the thing that you're looking forward to doesn't deliver, I think it just starts, especially like you say, after Act 2, where you get a little bit of action.
Yeah.
Then it just starts slowly just limping to the finish line.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think Julia Garner, she's got an unusual character. Of course, she's not the one turning into a beast. She's the other one, and so she does a lot of like looking horrified and screaming. But
she does some fighting back, though. She does.
But what I mean, she starts off. There's something amiss in this relationship, and it's not explored, and so she just seems kind of at a loss. She's as a character, she's never really three-dimensional at all.
Yeah, that is true. And it just never really brings you fully into the characters. I mean, they really push the father-son aspect. That's that whole metaphor that you're talking about and the trauma. But you're right. Between them, you get the feeling that, there's something is not quite right. But then, of course, when your husband is turning into a beast, you kind of put that aside because your child's in danger. So all in all, disappointing, really disappointing, especially when The Invisible Man was so good. But that is in theaters now, and it's Wolfman. Next up is one of the 2024 awards favorites that finally is getting a rollout to a wider audience this week. And this is an epic drama. When a visionary architect and his wife flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth of the modern United States, their lives are changed forever by a mysterious, wealthy client. It's the Brutalist.
These are yours, yes?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
Tell me, why is an accomplished foreign architect shoveling coal here in Philadelphia?
I'm afraid it is not so simple.
I brought you all out here to join me in looking forward toward the future.
What do you think?
It's unusual, even for you.
Your English is impressive. Perhaps you can help your husband sound less like he shined shoes for a wage.
They do not want us here.
Who do you mean?
The people here, they do not want us here.
Promise you won't drive your mad.
I promise.
So Adrian Brody has already won Best Actor at the Golden Globes. The film won Best Dramatic Film, and I think Brady Corbet won Best Director for a drama in this contest.
Yeah,
so this is an Oscar frontrunner.
For sure. Brady Corbet is the director and the co-writer, again, with his wife, Mona Fastvold. And even if you've seen his other films, first of all, if you don't know his name, you may recognize his face. He's had years, going back to he was a teenager in 13.
Mm-hmm.
Then he had roles you might remember in Funny Games and Melancholia. And then he got into filmmaking and was with good films, including Vox Lux a few years ago. But this one is such a monumental step forward as a filmmaker. It's almost you almost can't believe it.
Oh, I mean, it's jaw-dropping in that way.
On epic scale. I mean, first of all, know this going in. It's 3.5 hours long, and it features a 15-minute intermission. and he films in VistaVision, which is
70 millimeter.
70 millimeter stock that hasn't been used since the early 1960s. I mean, he is going in hot.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, for a filmmaker, it's one thing if that would have been like Spielberg or
Right.
somebody goes, this
Yeah.
is what I'm going to do. Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
But a
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah,
but
but
yeah.
a guy who's got these two good but sort of
Small.
lesser known, smaller films under his belt to go this big. It's amazing, and it's a fantastic achievement and an incredibly fascinating film. And we could really take the whole podcast talking about this movie. There's so much going on here, as you would hope in a 3.5-hour film. But it's basically, like the synopsis says, the core of it is Adrian Brody playing Laszlo Toth, and he comes over. He's a Holocaust survivor. He comes over to join his cousin, played by Alessandro Nivola, always great to see, who's just one of a great ensemble here, to work in his cousin's furniture store in Pennsylvania, where he waits to see about when his wife, played by Felicity Jones, and his niece, played by Raffi Cassidy, can join him. There's a lot of, with the immigration, a lot of the papers and everything like that, but he's hoping it could be soon. But he comes over by himself. And right away you get a sense when he's getting off the boat, Courbet frames the Statue of Liberty upside down in a gorgeous shot. And that just lets you know the sort of ride he's in for, chasing the American dream. And not only that, it lets you know this nimble camera work we're going to see. Some great shots and great framing throughout this whole film. The cinematography by Lowell Crowley, fantastic. Also the score. This features a great score. It's really anchored in this 3 or 4 note scale that you keep hearing as the stakes escalate. The score by Daniel Blumberg is fantastic as well. And Laszlo has been a celebrated architect in Budapest, where he was from, and that gets the ear of local Philadelphia tycoon Harrison Lee Van Buren Sr., played by Guy Pearce, who is terrific, sort of playing the Daniel Day-Lewis of this movie. And so he hires Laszlo, Adrian Brody, to design this long-desired project. It's a community center, but also a tribute to his mother, and it means a lot to him, to Guy Pearce. And in short, this project comes to engulf Laszlo's entire life.
Just consume him.
Consumes him. And there's so much more going on to this movie than just that. As it goes through the years and they have stops and starts and they have to put it aside for a while, and then they come back to it, and then there's a major plot twist, and all these other subjects are taken up as you really, on the surface, you have this look at how America was built, giving and taking from immigrants. Okay, that's the surface. But there's so many other subjects and themes that are rolled into this from the characters, and all of them. I mean, the cast is great. From the people I've already mentioned, also including Joe Alwyn, including Isaac D. Bancole, who we've seen many times. You would know his face, and Felicity Jones, who plays his wife, and she is as good as I've ever seen her. She has a smaller part, but in many ways, she is the soul of this movie, where her character goes and how she reacts to things that are happening to her husband. She's fantastic. Brody and Pearce have the two central performances often against each other, and Brody makes the pain of what he's been through palpable, both the pain and the obsession, the determination to finish this project, and won't let anything dissuade him. At the same time, you've got Guy Pearce, who's so much of an elitist. Even when he's being so condescending, he doesn't even realize it. He still thinks, well, I'm doing you a favor. There are two fascinating characters and two great performances that work in perfect tandem with each other. All these people pop up, and even if they're small roles, they're fascinating roles, especially the niece, played by Raffi Cassidy, and also the cousin, played by Alessandro Nivola. They could probably have their own films as backstories and what's going on there. It's just fascinating. And even though it's 3.5 hours, and I'll be honest, it does feel a little overlong. I don't think it probably needed to be. It's never boring. I wasn't bored for a second, and everything on the screen is interesting. What they're shooting, how they're shooting it, the characters, the writing, everything is very, very interesting, and it holds your attention. What begins to happen, though, it's told in 2 chapters, 2 long chapters, and an epilogue. And the first chapter is set up pretty straightforward of the narrative, and then it starts to play with some things in the second in the second chapter, bringing in these themes and bringing up questions and having things happen that aren't quite answered by the epilogue. What happened to this person? What happened here? Why did this happen? And things are left dangling for you to decide. And by the time it gets to the epilogue, I don't want this to sound too much like a criticism, but it's sort of a bit of a whimper at the end. Like after this grand statement and this epic scale, to get to the end, you're like, oh, you kind of felt like it was going to be more profound than that.
Right.
Not that it was bad.
No.
It wasn't. And I would recommend this movie. I really, really would. And I expect it to do well in awards season and Oscar time. But it just seemed like after all that, I was looking for a little bit more, I guess, profundity. But certainly not a knock, and not to say it shouldn't be seen. It should. Even for the sheer achievement. I mean, I can't believe what this guy in his third feature, Brady Corbet, and his wife, Mona Fastvold, have pulled off. And if nothing else, it shows that they cannot be ignored.
Oh, yeah.
Their vision as writers and their skill as filmmakers and Brady Corbet's skill with the craftsmanship of pulling this off, it's amazing. It's an amazing achievement. Even if the statement doesn't quite rise to the same level, I still think it is one of the best films of the year and just demands to be seen on the big screen. Please see it on the big screen.
That's why they gave you an intermission, so you can go to the bathroom.
Exactly. And it's also that you have IMAX versions as well.
Oh, yeah.
So if there's an IMAX in your area, choose that. I mean, if you're going to see this movie, see it for all of its glory and in its VistaVision 70-millimeter stock on IMAX. That's the way I would recommend it. But it is something. It is something else. And what a statement by filmmakers that, boy, we're looking forward to in the coming years. But this one is worth seeing on the biggest screen as you can find, and it's in theaters now, getting a wider release, The Brutalist. And next up, another awards favorite getting a wider rollout this year. It's based on a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. It chronicles the powerful friendship between two young African-American men navigating the harrowing trials of reform school together in Florida. This is Nickel Boys.
Whoa! That's it, Al. You're doing great.
What happened to that one kid? I used to hang with all the time.
You don't remember?
Remember what?
You really don't remember.
I don't know what more you want me to remember.
Hello.
Boy, this one reminded me in some ways how I felt after it, like Sing Sing.
Yeah.
You need a little downtime. You just kind of sit there in silence and contemplate things. It's so powerful. And this is another one that deserves all the awards consideration that it is getting.
Yeah, and I think the first, it's the cinematography that hits you immediately, which that's not always the case with the film. You sort of lean in later to the cinematography, but because of the way it's shot, Ramel Ross is the writer-director, and he shoots the entire film as a point of view. So for the first about 40 minutes, we are in Elwood's point of view. We only see what he sees. We don't even see him unless he passes a mirror or a window.
Right.
We see through the eyes of Elwood, who's the main character. We see through his eyes from the time he's a child. Mm-hmm. And then up until a terrible twist of fate, he winds up at this reform school, which is based on the true life Dozier School in Florida that was in existence in the United States for 111 years, tragically, horrifyingly. And if you're familiar with the Tananarive novel Reformatory, it's also based on the same school. And then once he arrives there, he meets Turner. And at that point, for the first time ever, we switch point of view and we see Turner's perspective.
Yeah, Turner is played by Brandon Wilson, and then Elwood, for the most part, is played by Ethan Heresy. I think I pronounced that right. And yeah, the point of view, it's interesting because this is certainly not the first film that has done that point of view. But in so many others, it can come off as a gimmick, and it gets tiresome very, very quickly. Here it does not. Here it works to further draw you in, and that's credit to not only the director but the performances.
Oh yeah,
there are some fantastic performances, especially as always, Ingenue Ellis Taylor.
Oh man,
once she comes into the fold, oh man,
yeah. She plays Elwood's grandmother, and we see her across the years. I mean, she changes pretty dramatically across the story, even though she doesn't have a ton of screen time. She is such a powerful presence, as is so often the case with her.
Yeah.
Telling a whole movie from a human being's eye perspective, right? It could seem gimmicky,
right.
And in the end, there's a narrative reason. But the other thing, and besides the fact that, of course, the cinematography is so glorious, so beautiful, so clever that it doesn't become tiresome. It's really poetic and lovely. But the other thing it does is requires that you take in this story from these young black men's perspective, that you can't sort of weasel your way out of it and look at it from somebody else's point of view and sort of brush it off. You're there in their bodies with them while this happens. And that just and I think that's why you need a minute after the movie. You need to just let it settle. And it's not like suffer porn. It's not, it's a tragic story. It really is. But I think also because of the way that it's shot, there are some really beautiful moments.
Oh, there really are.
And of course, it's an absolutely gorgeous movie to watch.
Yes, I think poetic was a good word to use. That's how it seems. Lyrical. It just flows so beautifully, even when it's being heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know that going in as it goes. This is not from the beginning when that twist of fate lands Elwood in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be some hard times ahead. But it's still, the way it unfolds is so beautiful, much like a Sing Sing or maybe even a Moonlight a few years ago. Mm-hmm. The way the story's told elevates it from being a gimmick, because just for the exact reasons you said, the choice of filming it this way is very intentional and for a purpose that suits the narrative perfectly.
Perfectly.
The cinematography here, fantastic as well. Jomo Frey is the cinematographer. He did Port Authority, All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt, Sell It in the Spades as well. So great work again here. See it in theaters. It is called Nickel Boys. Let's go to streaming next, Prime Video. This centers around the life of wrestler Anthony Robles, who was born with one leg and won a national championship in 2011 while competing at Arizona State University. This is Unstoppable.
I'm running out of time to be someone.
Dreamers are only as big as the dreams they chase. You can show them anything is possible.
He's a man now, right? So you gotta pitch in.
I'm not letting him quit wrestling, and I'm not letting him quit school.
Mom, it's just a sport. Doesn't put food on the table.
Wrestling is what you do. It's who you are.
We can't choose when to be great. We can only hope to be great when it counts.
You make people believe in something. You are unstoppable.
You're gonna win.
We'll see. I'll tell you a secret I've been hiding. I only got one leg.
This is the latest inspiring sports story. We saw one in theaters just a few weeks ago, The Fire Inside.
That's right.
Very good. This one relies a little bit more on convention. There certainly is a training montage. Mm-hmm. Maybe is that the litmus test? I don't know. But it benefits, much like The Fire Inside did, with two really good performances and really a good ensemble as well. But the whole thing, basically, at the core, is Anthony, the wrestler, played by Jarrell Jerome, who was in Moonlight as a teenager.
He's the voice of Spider-Man, Miles Morales in the
Spider-Verse,
first.
Yeah. He is very good as the wrestler Anthony, who was born with only one leg, and then his mother Judy, played by Jennifer Lopez. And once again, J-Lo, she's good. She is good. I mean, she showed back with, I thought she got robbed of some awards consideration with Hustlers.
Oh, yeah, she was
very
so
good.
great. She was great.
And she's very good here as a caring mother who's trying to support the dream of her son, even though things are tough at home with her and her husband, played by Bobby Cannavale, who again is a little bit Bobby Cannavale is so good, but
He's
he's
so
got to
good.
have the right role.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this is the right role for him, but the main two performances here are great. And then also you get the coach at Arizona State, his wrestling coach, Don Cheadle.
One of the all-time greats.
Always great to see him. You've got Michael Pena as an early high school coach.
Oh, he's always good, too,
yeah,
actually.
Micheletti Williamson, back from Forrest Gump. He's in here. So you got a good ensemble, and it's a good story. And it's well told, even if it hits those familiar beats. And it does sometimes move a little quickly. You like to have things explained just a little bit more. Case in point, I mean, they're not a rich family at all. And he gets a wrestling offer of a scholarship, but it's to Drexel University, which he doesn't want to go there. He wants to go to Iowa because Iowa, as anybody that follows college sports knows, they are the gold standard of wrestling programs, and they don't offer him. So that's his dream doesn't get fulfilled there. But he can walk on to Arizona State, where the coach is Don Cheadle, and who is and the coach actually says, no, take that full ride because you're probably not going to make our team as a walk-on. But, of course, we know he does make the team, and he does very well. But still, the fact that you couldn't believe that this family would turn down a full ride to college.
Yeah.
So they kind of skirt past that a little bit. But, hey, it worked out, and it's part of the story. And, of course, he goes on to beat the odds with having only one leg to great success. So it is an inspiring story. It is. I wouldn't raise it to the level of The Fire Inside because that movie was able to go beyond the sports part of it a little bit more than this one does.
A lot of help from a screenplay by Oscar-winning writer Barry Jenkins.
Yes, that helps. And this one is it's the feature debut for William Goldenberg, who's been a longtime editor, but I think this is his first time in the director's chair. And it's fine. It is very fine. I think of the streaming options of movies going straight to streaming, this is one of the better ones, especially better than one we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But, very great story. If you don't know the story of Anthony Robles, they bring you up to speed on what he's doing now, and he serves in the movie as a body double for Jarrell Jerome, so they can do some of that with CGI, of course. But he stands in as his body double in some scenes. And I will say, I'm no wrestling expert, but the wrestling scenes come off as very authentic as well. So all in all, well done, and two good core performances. A good ensemble all the way around, but two good core performances from Jarrell Jerome and J-Lo in Unstoppable, and that one is on Prime Video now, streaming. Let's go back to theaters for the latest from one of our favorite directors, Pedro Almodovar. This is Ingrid and Martha, who were close friends in their youth. They worked together at the same magazine, but after being out of touch for years, they meet again in an extreme but strangely sweet situation. It's called The Room Next Door.
I will not go out in mortifying anguish.
I don't know what to say.
I'm hoping you'll say yes.
Yes to what?
You're gonna need a lawyer.
No, this is an absolute secret.
I'll sleep with my door open, and the day that you find it closed is the day it's already happened.
I've completely lost faith in people doing the right thing.
I'm learning from her, and you should too. There are lots of ways to live inside a tragedy.
Do you hear them?
It's daytime. And you're alive.
Yeah, we love some Almodovar. I think isn't he just going by Almodovar lately? Either way.
I think he always has.
Okay.
People just refer to him as Almodovar. And of course, Tilda Swinton.
Oh.
And Julianne Moore.
Oh, come on.
And it's a funny thing. Since this film was announced, I don't think there was a movie I was more excited to see.
Oh, my, yeah.
Because I love all three of those people so very much. And, of course, Almodovar has worked with Tilda Swinton before. They did The Human Voice.
Yeah, that short.
Right, this short that was
fascinating.
It was so great.
Can you see that? Is that available anywhere? If it is, look it up.
Right.
It's fascinating.
I don't know. And then he's not worked with Julianne Moore before, but he did prior to this, he made these two really great short films because he also did a Western after The Human Voice. But this represents his first feature-length film entirely in English language. And, of course, you couldn't do better in terms of casting. You honestly couldn't. There's also a small role with John Turturro.
Mm-hmm.
who's always good.
Oh, yes.
And it looks exactly like an Almodovar film. I mean, the color is just pops in every scene. It's so beautifully framed and often looks very intentionally like very specific works of art.
Yes. Even if you follow art at all, you watch the trailer and one of them will pop right out.
Oh, yeah.
Pop right out at you. Oh, that's Christina's World. Boom.
Yeah. It's a beautiful film. It's absolutely gorgeous. And of course, the two performances at the center of it, you can't go wrong. Here's the problem. I'm just going to jump to it. And it also could possibly have suffered from high expectations because, my expectations could not have been
Understandable.
higher. Act 1 is so heavy with exposition. There is so much sitting and explaining what's happening and telling us the backstory. It's a real slog, even with these two incredible talents delivering the dialogue.
That's saying a lot. You can imagine how it would feel with lesser actors.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just really a slog. And then by Act 2, when they get into the actual, you're sort of more into, here's what's happening now. You're not explaining to me how we got here. Here's what's happening now between these two characters as their friendship sort of morphs and deepens. Then it's really an interesting movie. They're fascinating human beings. And of course, the performances, again, are couldn't be better. And so you want to be there in this cabin with them as they work through the details of what's happening and as they sort of just dig into their relationship. And at that point, periodically, Julianne Moore's character goes off to have these meetings with the John Turturro character, partly just to sort of get a break from the relationship and partly to sort of seek advice. And I don't want them to. Like, it feels like such an intrusion. The B story with the Turturro character doesn't seem necessary to me at all, and it does feel like time that's being stolen away from this relationship that now I am invested in. There are a lot of sort of the earmarks of a Almodovar film. There's a lot of potentially melodramatic content and stuff that should not seem funny but comes off as funny.
Right.
But I think maybe because of the language, it just doesn't gel. It doesn't have the magic that his earlier feature films have had, that where they can just be, how is it possible this is funny right now? It's a whole story about tragedy, and yet look at me laughing. This is lacking that. It's lacking that the little elements of absurdity that have I think made his other films so much different than anybody else's on earth. And it's not a huge, I don't want this to seem like a really tough criticism. You should go see this movie. You should. It's a very solid movie. But in terms of his catalog, it doesn't rank super high for me.
Yeah.
And I guess, to be fair to it, I thought that it would.
Yeah, especially because, and maybe that's on us for having such high expectations, but you can understand why. It's Almodovar, and it's got this cast, and you're like, okay. And just doesn't quite get there. But still, yeah, like you said, a recommendation to see it, especially if you're a fan of his. And that one is in theaters now. It's called The Room Next Door. Well, let's go to Netflix for the latest manufactured for streaming action comedy thriller. Former CIA spies Emily and Matt are pulled back into espionage after their secret identities are exposed. Back in action.
What is going on?
We were operatives for the CIA.
Like Jason Bourne?
Yeah, but we remember stuff.
Yeah. I knew you guys were lying about something, but I never thought you were cool enough to be spies.
I mean, that's not why we're cool.
Yeah, that's not why we're cool.
Back in business.
Back in business. Just like old times, baby. Just like old times.
Believe me, back in business.
You know that if I didn't have superior inner thigh strength, you would be dead.
On sight, I give you the green light.
Your inner thigh saved my life.
Speaking of back in action,
right?
Cameron Diaz retired 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But she's back.
Last film was Annie with Jamie Foxx.
Right.
So they're back together now, and this is just right from the jump. It just seems just cookie cutter. I mean, can you imagine these two people? We get a prologue 15 years ago when they were CIA agents, and then, they got together and she got pregnant and a job got bungled. Then they had to fake their own deaths and go undercover with different names. And now they have kids, teenagers, and of course their kids don't know about their past, but then they're brought back into it because they have to defend their daughter and kick some asses, and of course it goes viral, and there they are, and so they're back on everybody's radar, everybody that's looking for them, because they still know where a key to a cyber weapon is. That's always it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a key now to a cyber weapon.
Yeah, I think it is.
So everybody's on their tail, both the traitors in their own CIA and also the terrorists that want the bomb. So this is not novel stuff here.
Actually, honestly, you add a cat, and this is Argyle.
The Argyle.
Yeah.
You can go back to Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's been levels of this, levels of comedy. Sometimes it's for more comedic aspects than it is for actual thriller. And this tries to throw in a little bit of everything. And for most of the time, it is just so forced and so obvious. And okay, and it's just one of those, and I've said this a million times, I can just plug and play this review as much as these movies plug and play. You go out, you feed the dog, you come back, I can follow what's going on.
Yep.
It's another car crash. It's
Yeah.
another explosion. But it does pick up, I would say, in the third act, because you hear through much of it about Cameron Diaz not being on good terms with her mother, really hating her mother. So you think, okay, we're going to meet her mother.
Right.
And we do, because they have to go over to England, and her mother is a British ex-spy who plays her mother, but Glenn Close.
The always welcome
Glenn Close. And she has got a young trainee, let's put it that way, in the CIA, in the agent business, Nigel, played by Jamie Demetriou, and he is, I guess, from Fleabag, and he is a scream. He is really funny. He wants so bad to be an agent. He is funny. And then, of course...
then also from Fleabag.
Yeah.
Adam Scott's in this movie.
Adam Scott from Fleabag and also from All of Us Strangers.
Oh, yeah, so many things.
Yeah, he's in this. So it's a decent cast of actors. It's just so cookie cutter until it does go into this more comedic aspect when everything comes together and they're found out and everybody gets to where they are in England, and even the kids get involved, and it's this big family affair with the spies, and then it picks up a little bit. But for the most part, this is strictly, I totally get why it went straight to Netflix, because I would think if it went to theaters, it would be a bomb.
Right, it's just an algorithm-driven.
It is. It's so familiar, but it's nice to see both of these people back again. I mean, Cameron Diaz, great. She looks like she never left.
Yeah.
And same for Jamie Foxx. He's been through it here in the last year or so. So it's very, very pleasing, very likable people. It's just something that we've seen a million times, and this one doesn't elevate it at all. But if you're just sitting around and it's wintertime and we're going to watch something new on Netflix, here it is. And that's about the best I can offer until it gets to some laughs, some more laughs in Act 3. And this is co-writer and director Seth Gordon, who up to now has done, he did The Lost City Pixels, and also Cry Wolf. But this is his latest, and the latest for, the return of Cameron Diaz with Jamie Foxx again in Back in Action on Netflix now. Next, a documentary in limited theaters. A woman in Hollywood cares for injured hummingbirds, experiencing personal growth as she witnesses their fragility and resilience. It's called Every Little Thing.
You can't address a trauma until you know what it was.
I'll get you cleaned up here. It's okay.
You come ready-made with the empathy because of your own struggles. Maybe that's the reason that I came to the hummingbirds.
You sit right there until you dry, okay?
He's really becoming a bird now. He's really showing off. How can something fly vertical, sideways, backwards, and upside down and not tap into some magical realism?
Yes. No doubt in my mind that they'll make it, thanks to you.
Without you.
Someone says, get off my property, you can just give them the bird. Jimmy's a character, actually. He said I was born to be on film.
Rachel Willis reviewed this movie for us and loved it. And you can tell just from the trailer how beautiful this movie is going to be with this slow motion photography of hummingbirds. And and you just see how stunning they are. You never, they move so fast. It's hard to know. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous movie.
Yeah, and how this woman, Terry Messier, brings them back to life. I mean, some of these hummingbirds have injured wings, and you're thinking, well, how in the world could I bring that back to life?
Right.
Or, fix a wing of a hummingbird, and she does it.
Yeah, she does.
Just these minute little, she's treating it with a cotton swab or this and giving it time to build up its strength. It's beautiful. It is beautiful. Like you said, just from the trailer.
Yeah.
You're hooked.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of the Honeybee movie from a few years ago. Remember that?
Yes.
You're just like, your heart just ached for that. And there are heartbreaking moments in this as well.
There
because, things happen with animals. Not all of them survive.
Right.
But she has a mission, and she is so committed to it. And then you get this slow motion photography of a hummingbird's wings and them coming back to nursing back to health. It's amazing.
Yeah, you will not regret watching this movie. So just do it.
And Rachel Willis's full review can be found at madwolf.com. Yeah, the writer-director is Sally Aitken. And if this is in your area, check it out. Hopefully it'll be on streaming soon. Don't think it is yet. But limited release out now in theaters, Every Little Thing. And one more this week, an effective action thriller. This night is like all the others for Maddie, a student by day, locksmith by night. But Claire, the enigmatic young girl he helps out that night, is not who she claims to be. Maddie has only one night to prove his innocence in a city in turmoil. It's called Night Call.
La nuit se traîne, la nuit n'en finit plus.
Je suis juste un putain de serrurier.
Brandon Thomas reviewed this one for us at madwolf.com, and he loves him a nice little action thriller, and that is what he got.
Yeah, this is a Belgian film. Michel Blanchard is the co-writer and the director. And it's one of those, the guy's in a wrong place at the wrong time. He thinks he's being nice to somebody by letting them into an apartment when they're locked out. Oh! Shouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're on the wrong end of that. Where's the money?
That's right. That's right. And it's well shot. It's well edited. It's so well paced. And the central performance is just exceptional. If it is in your area, especially if you're a fan of thrillers, do yourself a favor and check this out.
Yeah, and Brandon's full review is at madwolf.com. He gave it 4 stars. So loved it. If you love those thrillers, check it out. Night Call in theaters now.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Yes, it's lobby time. So the first time in the new year, we're checking in with Daniel Baldwin, a.k.a. the Schlocketeer, for the latest studio news. What's happening?
Well, first off, before I get to the news, obviously we lost David Lynch this week. And if anyone listening is not subscribed to the Criterion streaming service, now is a great time to do it. They've got 4 of his movies, a bunch of his shorts, and a couple documentaries about him and his work. Not a lot of his stuff is streaming outside of the films that are on Criterion. So if you're in the mood to revisit and you don't have any discs, that's the best place to do it right now.
Nice. And I know Hope wants to remind everyone that he did a Duran Duran documentary.
That's right, he did. It was great.
What else is going on?
Well, Luca Guadagnino's Queer is now available on VOD, and the award-winning Sebastian Stan and Adam Pearson starring film A Different Man is now available to stream on Max.
Cool.
And then we've got quite a few things hitting next week. Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2 will be available to stream on Paramount Plus starting on January 21st. Robert Eggers' Nosferatu will hit VOD on January 21st. DreamWorks' The Wild Robot will be streaming on Peacock on January 24th. The horror rom-com Your Monster will hit Max on January 24th. And Jason Reitman's Saturday Night will be on Netflix on January 25th.
All right. Good stuff this month.
Lots to watch.
Yeah.
Robert Zemeckis' Here will be streaming on Netflix beginning January 30th. And then moving into theatrical for a bit, Vertical Entertainment has set a February 28th theatrical release for Paul W.S. Anderson's fantasy adventure In the Lost Lands. That's based on a story by Game of Thrones creator George R.R. Martin, and it stars Mila Jovovich and Dave Bautista. Warner Brothers has shifted dates on a couple things. They've moved up the theatrical release of Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17 to March 7th and pushed back the release of Ryan Coogler's Sinners to April 18th. Those films basically just completely swapped dates. And then moving into later in the year, Wicked Part 2, which arrives in theaters later this year on November 21st, has been retitled. It will now be called Wicked for Good.
Cool.
And then Paramount has set a November 21st theatrical release for Edgar Wright's Glenn Powell starring remake of The Running Man, which also has Coleman Domingo, Josh Brolin, Lee Pace, Michael Cera, William H. Macy, and Katie O'Brien.
Interesting.
Nice. That's a good lineup right there.
Right.
Do we know who's doing the game show host?
Coleman Domingo.
No.
Wow, that's so great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was hoping so.
Selling point enough. And then into weird territory for a bit, Sony has set a December 25th theatrical release this year for their meta-comedy reboot of Anaconda.
You mean it wasn't comedy the first time?
Oh, just wait. It's from the director of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and it's about two aging friends played by Paul Rudd and Jack Black who get stranded in the rainforest while misguidedly attempting to remake their favorite movie, 1997's Anaconda.
I'm in.
Oh, yeah, very in. Merry Christmas to us.
Right. And then to close things out, I know most of us are excited for Danny Boyle's 28 Years Later, which will come out this summer in June. And that first trailer is pretty great. But what's extra fun is that it is the first in a sequel trilogy. The second film has already wrapped production, and as a result, Sony set a January 16th, 2026 release date for Nia DaCosta's 28 Years Later, Part 2, The Bone Temple.
Okay.
And then Part 3 will shoot sometime later this year with Danny Boyle directing that one himself.
Oh, okay. Bring them all on.
Right.
Always good to hear from you. You can always check out Daniel on the socials, get the news and notes at The Schlocketeer. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Looking ahead to next week, we've got another awards favorite. September 5 is finally coming out wide.
Also, The Girl with the Needle.
Presents, latest from Steven Soderbergh.
Brave the Dark.
Inheritance.
Grafted.
Hazard.
And Into the Deep.
And, of course, some more news and notes with the Schlocketeer. But that's all next week. Let us know what you think about this group of films. Maybe you love The Wolfman better than we did, or The Brutalist, or Nickel Boys. Back in Action on Netflix, Unstoppable on Prime. A lot to talk about, so keep the conversation going. We love it. You can find us easily on all the socials at Mad Wolf Columbus. And until next week, stay warm if it's as cold where you are as it is where we are. Go Bucks, by the way. And we'll talk to you next week. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
See ya.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.